All right, so this is my third podcast attempt now, and I'm not going to lie, pretty much every single podcast intro is absolutely terrible. So I want to kick things off straight away by asking you, Hunter, how you went from cleaning cars and not having women run away from you to quitting your 9 to 5 in what I believe was 129 days, closing 15K deals and closing a hot Latina lady whose mother now bosses you around.
Oh, she's gonna love that. Yeah. So you're right. That podcast intro sucked. That was the best one I've ever heard. But yeah, my name is Hunter, and I have an operations agency now called Profit Pilot, which we build custom Notion workspaces for online businesses. Typically, like marketing agencies or like lead gen, email marketing, all that sort of stuff. We've also built like newsletter assets as far as like templates and all the rest. But I started back in, what day is it? November of 2022. November 29th of 2022, I remember specifically, is when I made my Twitter account. And I had literally no idea what I was doing. None. I had no idea how I was going to make money, how I was going to get people to follow me, what I was going to write about. None of it. I had no clue. All I knew for sure is that I was waking up every morning at 5 a.m. to run 10 miles a day, to pull people's cars as a valet and beg for tips, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And I was in my second, I was like ending my second year of college at the time, and I knew that like that's going to come up quick, and I do not want to be stuck or comfortable in like a regular job, because I've seen it happen so many times. It's so easy to like fall into mediocrity, I guess, for lack of a better word. And it's not mediocrity for everybody, but just for me and how I wanted to live my life, I couldn't, it was the last thing in my mind of doing that. So November 29th, I started my personal brand, and I just put everything I had into it. From every hour I had free from working valet, I was looking at YouTube videos and reading threads about everything, and writing content, not knowing what I was doing, but knowing that if I did it long enough, it would work out. So I just held on to that.
Why did
If
you
I
even
just
want the
keep
personal
doing
brand?
this,
Why did you even
why?
start? Why did yeah?
I was broke. I had no, like, I looked into, so many different business ideas and things that I wanted to do, but they all required money, like a good bit of money if you wanted to really replace your full-time income. And I didn't have the money to do that. I was making minimum wage as a valet. So I I think it was I saw Islo. Have you ever seen Hey Islo? Like the Notion guy? I saw his content, and he was like 20 years old, I think, when I followed him, and he said he made $200,000 selling Notion templates and writing on Twitter. So I was like, okay, that I mean, I like that idea. I like that direction. I like Notion and everything that I can do within that. But what really got me into it was this course that I took by this lady named Claudia Stelner. And at the time, I think she was 13 years old, and she was making like thousands of dollars online. At least that's what I read, and all from writing content on Twitter. And that solved like the biggest dilemma I had of being like, I'm nobody. I have no skills. I have no frame of reference to talk from where people would believe me. So if this 13-year-old could do it, then why can't I? And that's kind of the mindset I took into it.
Fucking mental. I've seen her about actually. I remember seeing her ages ago. I
Yeah.
was like, she was like 16 or something. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
you haven't told us how you get to the 15K deals from hitting this up yet. I feel like
I
I need the
suppose,
rest of the
right.
story.
So
All the Latina.
I started my personal brand, and then I started releasing like like Notion templates, but they weren't like systems really. They were just like info products. Like I made the entrepreneur's database, the entrepreneur's tech stack, and they were essentially just things that I wish I had when I started. Like what content to read, what content to watch, to like figure out, get good perspectives, get good ideas. So I just made a database of those things. And then what tools to use for
Like a swipe
what,
file.
like, yeah, exactly like that. I just made a bunch of those geared towards entrepreneurs, just built inside Notion. And then from that, people seem to really like the Notion templates. But not even that, like, it's not like I got lucky doing that either. Like I'd spend 2 or 3 hours every day posting these free templates inside Facebook groups and subreddits and Twitter communities to like, get people to know who I am. So it's not like it just happened. Like people just found these templates and I grew into this. Like I spent hours putting this in Facebook groups where people didn't give a shit. So, despite from that, I got my first client and I think he paid me, it was $250 for like an hour long call. And I just like helped him like rearrange a meeting template that he had that he wanted to use for this big meeting that he had. And that was awesome because I was like, wow, an hour of my time I made 3 days worth of work with tips. And from there, I slowly just kind of ramped up what I was doing and figured out what I do best and who it serves best. Because a lot of people think about like, oh, they just want to make a bunch of money. Like, obviously, yes, we want to make a bunch of money so we don't have to have a 9 to 5. But I think the better way to think about it is who do you provide the most value to? Because if you figure out who you provide the most value to, you can make the most money from that person. Like I'm not going to make thousands of dollars a month charging entrepreneurs, how to create Notion stuff. But if I target a marketing agency and say, hey, I can totally revamp your operations where you can do twice the amount of work with the same time and make twice the amount of money. That's something that you can charge more for, basically. So it went from like $250 to $600, then to my first retainer at like $1750 a month. And once I got that retainer, I was like, I'm done. I'm not working anymore. I'm gonna go full time into this and just see where that goes. And I'm lucky I took that risk because I was able to get another contract for I think it was 6,000 2 weeks after that. And then from there, yeah, you just kind of slowly ramp up the price and the deliverables of what you're producing because you get better, you get feedback, you know what you're doing better, you feel more comfortable with charging more. And then yeah, so now we are here charging more money than $250 by the hour. I also don't like doing hourly work anymore because I feel like that punishes you for being efficient at what you do. But besides the point, I'd love to hear more about how you got started, Tats, because I know we've connected through the grapevine of X, but I don't think I was there like, your first 1,000 followers or so. And I think the first 1,000 is like the trying times, that's when you're really figuring it out.
Hmm. I never know where to start with a story, but I guess, yeah, I'll start it off just before
From the
Twitter.
beginning.
So I was born. No, so
Yeah, I was
I,
born.
I was still technically in uni doing electrical mechanical
Mm-hmm.
engineering, like you, but
Oh, okay.
I deferred my third year. Within that third year, I'd gotten a job to build a brand in the Bitcoin space for like a big events company. And the way I'd gotten that job is I was like a crypto degen. So I'd like gotten all my mates into crypto and my family were into crypto. And I was like, I need to just take a year out to look at this thing. And I started writing a newsletter for fun in that time. And then one of the guys reading the newsletter was an entrepreneur in my local area whose daughter I knew from school. And he just DM'd me when I got home and he was like, do you want to get a coffee? And so I ended up getting a job, and that was my intro into marketing. And whilst I was there, I became friends with the marketing manager for that company and the sister company. And one of the days we would just walk into the car park and he was like, oh, do you want to start a marketing agency? And I was like, yeah, okay. Like I've always wanted to start a business. Like might as well start now. Because like they always say like your first business fails, right? So I was like, might as well start failing today. So a month or so into that, classic, spent ages building the website. Oh, what words are going to do us? I remember researching companies and I was like, old people's homes. they look like they're making bank. Like, I reckon we should go after them. And then he started telling me about Twitter, and he was like, "Man, we should start Twitter writing accounts." And I was like, why would I want to do that? Like, what is the point of this? I hated using social media, and the only social media I
Mm-hmm.
did use was Twitter, but for following like macroeconomics and crypto stuff. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
he got then started listening to Costa Robertson, some of the big like money Twitter people, and he was like, "Man, like ghostwriting's a thing. Like, I think this is what we should do." And he's like, "There's this course that Dakota's putting together, like a cohort." And he was like, "I reckon we should do it." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe." Like, we listened to the sales call, and then I was like, "Okay, I'm in." So we decided to split the payment and join and get a ticket for that. We were initially thinking of both going in, but I couldn't get a sales call book. So I remember being like, spoke to Taylor Simmons actually on the sales call, and I was like in the back, like scribbling down notes for him to ask Taylor. Anyway, we joined that. I set up a Twitter account. Initially, I had no idea what to do, so I think I started as an anonymous account called Branston Pickle because I thought it'd be funny. Like, we were both like, I swear anonymous accounts do best. So we were like, why don't we just?
I
I'm
did
going to
that
talk
too.
about
Like, I get
branding.
it.
Yeah, I was like, I'm
But
going to
I'm
talk
gonna be
about
an
branding.
anonymous account.
Yeah, it was Branston Pickle, which is, if you don't know Branston Pickle, it's like this like thing that you can have with cheese. It's really nice. And obviously, like after the first month, had like no followers bar Dylan, and I'd only like did like one comment, one post, and like a few comments. Anyway, we kickstart this cohort, and initially I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to help Dylan grow his account. Like, I don't need one for myself." And then after watching the content, I was like, "Oh, actually, I kind of want my own account as well." So February the 4th, I remember, is when I was like, "Okay, going to start tweeting every day." First month, fairly slow, like 155 followers. But honestly, second month is where I went crazy. I went from like 155 to, I think, 2,000 followers by the end of the second month. And the whole goal was basically to show that I'm good at writing and can get ghostwriting clients. And from there, it just started snowballing pretty fast. I also started doing spaces. So if anyone doesn't know, it's a podcast, but on Twitter, and live streamed and started then networking with like all the biggest accounts on Twitter pretty much. And then through that, yeah, I remember getting my first client. Actually, wasn't a ghostwriting client initially. It was a coaching client. And to be fair, getting the first proper client felt like a grind because I think after like 80 days, I'd made about $60 from just like Gumroad stuff, like little digital
Mm-hmm.
products, but hadn't managed to get a proper client. We were getting in some leads for ghostwriting, but hadn't fully closed one. And there was actually one ghostwriting client who literally got on a sales call, and he was perfect. He was like a big marketing agency founder, and he already had like 50K followers, and he was basically tanking his account, and he needed someone to revive it. And so I had taken the sales call in work, and he was like, "Yeah, let's go straight away, $3,000 a month, done deal with the option to add on a newsletter." I walked out, I hugged Dylan, told some of my workmates, went home, told my whole family. Dylan told his whole family. We've made it. And then
We've made it.
a week later, didn't hear anything from the client, and we were like, "Oh, like, is everything all right?" And I remember I hadn't written up a contract or anything, so it took a day to send over like the actual payment link. Then we're like, still don't get any messages. I'm like, "Oh, Dylan, maybe you should tell him." Oh, that's it. I didn't realize you could invoice in dollars. So I had said it's $3,000 a month, but I transferred it to pounds and invoiced him in pounds through Stripe because I didn't realize you could do that. And I was like, "Oh, maybe he thinks I'm an idiot because of that." So Dylan was like, "Oh, sorry, mate. I'm usually the one who like does the payments." Like, anyway, turns out he got cold feet and he left us. So honestly, after that, I was like, "Fuck, is this even possible?" Right? And then yeah, finally
Mm-hmm.
got. Then a guy reached out, kind of wanting coaching, and I think it was for $690. And literally after that came in, I found my mum, like we hugged each other, and yeah, I was buzzing. And then things just sort of to snowball from there. I think it got busier and busier, more coaching clients, got a ghostwriting client, and then decided to launch a cohort, Growth Army. And when we went to launch that, we were kind of hoping to sell. We teamed up with one other guy, Glenn. So me, Dylan, and Glenn. And I was honestly hoping to sell like maybe 20 max. Like, we were like, if we sell 5, we'll be lucky because for a slot was $1,400 to join. And we put up the wait list. I think we managed to get to like 200 people or something on there, 200, 300. And we were like, what if this flops, right? Because we hadn't really put something out in the public, like a big launch before. Everything's behind the scenes, like, in the DMs to sell
Mm-hmm.
coaching, ghostwriting, etc. And I remember first day of launch, busiest day ever in work, like trying to write
I
like
still
launch
remember this
emails.
day.
Man, trying to write launch emails and everything whilst I was in work. And I was coming down with a fever as well because I'd just come back from a music festival. Most busy day of my life. And yeah, we ended up selling 60 slots, well, over 60. I think it might have been 64 at the max, and had to close down the whole launch early. And it was after that I was like, okay, I'm ready to like leave my 9 to 5 and do some own.
Yeah. Wow, that's I still remember that day you launched and you guys were talking about how many like slots you sold in the first day and like how much money it was, and I was like, damn, like these guys are killing it. And I reached out to, I think it was Glenn, like a while before. I think you were like the last one I reached out to, because I was talking with Seb originally, and then he was kind of like, friends with you guys doing that thing, and he split off, did his, his own cohort, and then I reached out to Glenn and Dylan and you eventually. But I think, I mean, obviously, like I vibed with you the most, over here now. But oh, it was just awesome watching that. It was like watching a movie. You guys just like, because we would be updated throughout all of it, like before the launch. Like you guys were taking pictures of each other. I remember seeing you pass out like during the launch on some couch or something. So man, it was just so exciting to just like watch that, to just see that happen. It was so exciting.
It did feel mental. It was definitely kind of like, I feel probably when you got your 6 sound on deal, it broke my limiting belief of like money you can make. Because like before that, I
Oh
was like,
yeah,
holy shit, surely you can't make like 20K in a few days. And like it's a concept that you don't really understand when you're working a 9 to 5, especially when you're just starting out, because you're like, oh,
right.
20K is what someone earns in a year, like from working a year. And so the idea that like we could bring in like over 80 grand in 4 days, as like we were only, that was only like our fifth month or something. So after like 5 months, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I quit my 9 to 5. um yeah, man, it's pretty crazy, to be fair. So I guess that follows on a little bit in terms, I actually don't remember how we met or like what we
I
even
don't
started
either.
with. No, neither.
I have no idea. I would have to scroll up into the Twitter DMs to see who did what first, but I
Yeah,
don't I
yeah,
don't really remember either. I remember our first call, I think. And I remember like
yeah.
getting off the call and thinking like, this guy's cool. Like we're gonna be friends.
That's exactly how
Yeah.
I remember you came on, like dark room with a little hoodie on, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" and like instantly, yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I vibe." And I think it's same vibe but different skill set, because you're
Yes.
way more
Yeah.
systemized, and I appreciate systemization, but not as good at it. Whereas I'm much more, yeah, copy side. So I guess a little bit
Copy. And I'm
then.
not as good as that. And I like that so
No,
much. So it
yeah,
really
same,
meshes.
yin and yang. So I guess a little bit. Should we touch on leverage a little bit in terms of like how
Sure. I
you
mean, it
thought
is the
about
title of this
leverage?
podcast.
Exactly. Like
Hmm.
how you thought about it over the course of what you're doing with the business and how you're thinking about it going forwards.
Right. I think the first time I was really introduced to the concept of leverage was, I don't know if I could nail it down to one specific moment, but it was definitely two times where I brushed across it and thought like, okay, this is what I need to focus on if I want to make the biggest impact with my time. Because even still now, it's summer for me now, but I have my last semester of uni coming up. But at the time, like I was still, and it was much more involved then too, because I had in-person classes. I was working full time, while in school. So I was just trying to do this on the side. But I read this book. It's still right there. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and he talked about like it. It was a really great read because it was more story based, not like here's what this guy did. Put money in this account, and then 10 years later, then you have this amount of money. He talked about like how money is a tool and how different types of people use it as such, and how most people think about it as like you're trading your time for money. But I will never forget this quote ever. He said that the definition, or his definition, of financial freedom was being able to do whatever you want, wherever you want, with whoever you want, for however long you want to do it. I really thought about that. And I just wanted to do that with my life. And that's what he defined like true leverage, true freedom is being able to do whatever it is that you want, wherever, with whoever, like I said. But then, of course, the other half of that was Hermosi. And if you guys don't know who Alex Hermosi is yet, I just feel sorry for you. But you need to check him out and learn from him because, I mean, Tats will tell you the same thing. But he talked about leverage being like, how much output are you getting for your input? So if it takes you to do 10 minutes and you get a quantity of one, for that input, 10 minutes equals one, then how can you find ways to do where 10 minutes equals two, or 10 minutes equals four, or 10 minutes equals 100? Like those sort of thinking about it like that. So, like, the amount of input that I'm doing, like writing a tweet or creating a YouTube video, like how much leverage is on the other side of that? How much work do I have to do now for rewards later? And that it all comes down to, for me, a lot of it is like systemizing things, being very efficient with whatever it is I'm doing. But I just love the concept of leverage, especially in today's age. I don't feel like it's something talked about ever in like regular societal conversations. Like you go to the bar, you're not going to hear somebody being like, what's the highest leverage thing you did this week? Like I don't hear that. So I just love talking about it and, pretty much doing everything in my life, business, personal life, revolving around systems. Like I have a whole area in my Notion dedicated for just learning things, like that sort of leverage. It's quicker to learn things. It's more efficient. I can do, all of these other things. But yeah, I feel like I could literally go on about this forever, but I want to hear what you think of leverage. Where you first heard the concept and where it clicked with you, where you were like, yes, like this is something that I need to strive for, or not strive for, but like incorporate in my life and what I'm doing every day.
I mean, there's two key things that stand out. One, when I was like a child, and my dad like flat tire on the car, and we were trying to change the wheel, but the bolt was like literally just like completely stuck on. So like no matter how hard you pull, literally couldn't do it. And I don't know, it must be maybe like 6 or whatever. And I remember my dad being like, I've got a trick. And I was like, what's this? And then he got like a tube. Like he basically just got a tube and he just stuck it onto the actual spanner thing. And like just with his like few fingers, he just pushed it up and like just undid this bolt. And I remember like I was mind blown then. He was like, this is what leverage is.
This is what leverage
So that
is.
was
I mean,
like
it's
that
true.
was physical leverage. And then obviously I learned more about it in physics and engineering. And then I don't know, probably classic. Like we're so basic, aren't we? Like you're like Hormozy, but I think that I read the Almanac
Yeah.
of Naval Ravikant, like because
Oh,
after I'd left,
literally reading that right
after
now.
I,
So good.
it is so good. After I left uni, or I took my year out, I was in Portugal, and I was like, I feel like I should start reading again now that I've got all this time. And so I messaged the guy who actually ended up hiring me because he was like the most successful business person I knew. And I just
Hmm.
dropped him a text and I was like, if you could recommend me like any one book, like what would it be? And he was like, oh, probably an Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And I was like, this sounds mental. So I've got that, and then I think Naval touches it on there, and that's also what got me like obsessed with reading as well. So probably
Oh,
that, but I didn't really do anything
that's
with it to be honest.
mm,
I did. I remember
that's
that
a
he
good
was like,
one. I didn't
yeah,
realize that.
because I think in there he's like, oh, like if you read like an hour a day or something, you're in like the 1% or whatever, or like 0.0001, and I was like, I could start doing that like today. So, like
I want to
I
be in
could
the
get
0.1%.
yeah.
Let me join that club.
So then I think then actually experiencing it was I think about in April, so 2 months into Twitter, and so at this point I just grown my audience and I'd built up an email list of maybe like just over 1,000, and I'd never sold anything to that email list. It was just a weekly newsletter that I wrote, and I reached Kieran Drew. I think Kieran Drew asked me to I don't know why, but I was looking at his high impact writing course. I don't know why he gave me. I don't know why he gave me. I think he gave me early access for it. Oh, that's it. I was going to help him promote it. I think through a Twitter space, and so I said, "Is there any way to get a look at it?" And he was like, "You can buy it early if you want." So I just bought it. I think like a day early, just to have a skim through it. And I was like, "Oh, this is pretty good. Do you have like an affiliate link or anything?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." So he sent over an affiliate link. And so I remember I stuck it in a PS. I like signed up as an affiliate, and at the end of an email, I literally just stuck it as a PS. And I was like, I literally didn't think anything. I was like, no one's gonna read this. It was just email, literally like,
Right.
hey, I've just checked out High Impact Right, and I think it's cool. And I sent it out, and I didn't even check it because I was like, I did not expect to make any money. And then I remember I was in
Right.
work the next day and I checked the Thrive account and I was like, oh my God, there's like $200 in like that I've just apparently made. I was like, how have I done that? And I was like, oh, it's like from the affiliate link. And I was like, oh, like, should I send like another email out promoting this? And I was like, oh, nah, maybe like my list will hate it. Like maybe that'll be too scammy if I sell them something. Because I'd never sold them anything, which is obviously like crazy to look back on now. And then I was like, you know what?
Right.
I was like, I've got 20 minutes. I'll just quickly write up a quick email and link it. So I wrote a quick email, linked it, sent it, didn't think anything of it again, got on with work. When I got home then, that night, I checked it again. And I think I made in total just under £1,000. So like 900 and something. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting paid like 100 quid a day at work. And I just made like an entire like 7 days worth of wages with a simple link. And I was like, that's my first taste of leverage. Like that's what it means to
Mm,
have some form of leverage where like I didn't even have to deliver. I didn't have to make the course. I didn't have to teach the course. I didn't even have to sell it. I just need to write one email, which took me less than 20 minutes to write, and link it. And yeah, that's when it kind of blew my mind, to be honest.
yeah. I remember my first taste of like, mm, this is this could be this could be something, and it wasn't even that like spectacular. I think it was like a couple days after, um, like I started Twitter, and I was like posting my templates in like the Facebook groups and subreddits. Somebody donated $1 to me because you have that option on Gumroad where you can like pay whatever you want. And I remember getting that email and thinking, like, wow, somebody gave me $1 of their hard earned cash for this thing that I built online that's completely free. And my mind just spiraled from there. Like, I thought, if, well, if I can do this, then like, what else? What else can I do? I also think it's interesting that you started a newsletter first because I didn't. I guess I didn't really touch on that, but that's like the first thing I did. Like before I started on Twitter, I had a finance newsletter that I wrote daily for like 5 months or so. It was anonymous, and I think I gained like 350 subscribers in the first 5 months of it, and I asked everybody I knew in real life to subscribe to this because I had no idea how to get subscribers. Absolutely none. So I literally asked everybody I knew in person, like from real life, like my high school friends, my parents, my family. Like I just did that every day. Wrote that daily, and nothing ever came of it. I don't do it anymore, but it's interesting how we can look back on that and be like, well, if I never did that, then I probably wouldn't have been able to quit in 129 days because my writing skills wouldn't have been as good as they were then from writing those daily newsletters, and just all the little things you learn along the way. You realize later on how much of an impact they can make and what you want to do then. So that brings me to a great question. I know, like, we basically get to do,
If you're going to
we have
mention something that's not to do
control
with
of our time.
newsletters, if you're going to mention something that's not to do with newsletters, I've got one thing to add there. That is so weird that you
Go
wrote a
ahead, go ahead.
newsletter before that because I also wrote a
Mm-hmm.
finance newsletter, but it was like macroeconomics newsletter for over a
Really? That's
year,
kind of what mine was
and I
about.
got to
It was like
300 followers.
macroeconomics.
I got to 300
Mm-hmm.
followers. Similar, but after over a year, didn't make a penny from it. Had no
Wow.
idea how I was going to get subs. And I started it as like weekly. I was literally sending it every week, and I literally treated it as my baby. Like I was like, I have to do it.
Oh,
I
me
think it was like
too.
Wednesdays
Oh, it
initially,
was my
and
baby.
I remember seeing
Mm-hmm.
friends. I was in Lisbon, and I was out with a friend. And I was like, oh, I've got to go, and she's like, oh, what are you going to do? I was like, oh, I have to write my newsletter. She was like, what? Why? And I was like,
She
I
was
just have
like,
to do it.
what?
And I think
I
at that
remember
time, like
explaining to
70
people. They were like,
people.
"What?
Only 70
Sorry,
people
I
would have
can't
been
come
reading
hang
it.
out. Like, I got these 70 people are waiting for me. Like, you don't understand." I remember doing the same thing. Oh my gosh! But it was so important. Like, I had to do it. There's no way I was gonna miss it.
Yeah, it did feel, and it's funny. Like more and more friends would start referencing it because at the start of every newsletter, I would say something personal. I was going to my life or like my family's life, and more people started being like, "Oh, like I follow your newsletter. Like I don't read any of it. I just read like the first paragraph, like about your life." Um, so I feel
And
like
you're
I
like,
need to message them
"Shit."
again because I basically a lot of people like that was their source I think for like Bitcoin news because a lot of like news around that is so shit and just scammy. So actually,
Yeah.
it's probably been about a year since I emailed them, but I think I'm gonna have to. I've been thinking recently I should send an email because people have actually been telling my mum, like they'll meet them like a friend of my mum. They'll be like, "Oh, I've been reading your son's newsletter. Like, how come he stopped sending them?"
I have people that like sometimes will reach out to me now and be like, "Yeah, man, like you still doing that finance newsletter? Like I kept reading that," and I'm like, "You're still reading that? Like I haven't sent an email in months, but you're telling me you still read that?" But, yeah,
Wild.
man, that's
So yeah,
interesting. I didn't know you did a finance newsletter too.
yeah, that is interesting. I loved it to be honest. I thought I wanted to go into finance. I almost went into finance.
I did too.
Um,
I literally studied for my Series 65. I believe it was 65 because I thought I wanted to be a hedge fund manager and like go that route, which is really interesting. And I like
hmm.
investing and that sort of thing. Learned tons about it, of course, but it came down to a lifestyle thing for me. Like I didn't want to be responsible for other people's money like that. Like I didn't want to carry that stress. I just wanted to be responsible for me. Not that I say I couldn't do it. I mean, there's no way to know now, but I didn't want to carry that burden every day. Like I just feel like that's such a high stressful life, and it's
It is.
so much of it is out of your control. You know, whether the market goes up or down, and yeah, I wanted something more nomadic and free than
I've
that.
actually experienced this because my old boss. I used to work for a cleaning company with my then
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend, and my
Mm-hmm.
old boss ended up giving me 10 grand to invest in
Oh no,
cryptos for
I have
him.
such a similar story.
What is to be? It ended up alright, but
Go
this
on,
was
no,
at
go
the
on.
peak. At the peak, so shit dropped, and he was like, "Oh my god, is everything alright?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I think it should be fine." Luckily, then it went back up, and I sold it off, and I gave it back to him because he
Oh,
wanted to put
mine
it into
didn't end
something
as
else.
well.
What happened with you?
With my then girlfriend at the time, her mom was like I believe like a fiduciary manager, like she had her own fund, and I was day trading a lot.
Oh no!
Like,
Oh
oh, I
no!
know, I know, and I don't do it anymore, but at the time that was how I was making some money on the side. But I was like such an irresponsible kid. Like I was swinging overnight like weekly options, which if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's basically like gambling. I thought I knew what I was doing, but no, I didn't. But suffice to say, there was one week I had $500 in my account and I brought it up to like 3 grand by the end of the week. And her mom saw this and was like, "Whoa, like that's pretty cool." So she gave me $1,000 and was like, "Do whatever you do with this. We'll split the profits of whatever you make on it." I was like, "Sweet, like this is gonna be awesome." I It was straight to zero. I don't even know if I like ever was up on the account. The straight. I still have the spreadsheet where I can look back and see the trades I made and how fast the account
Oh
went down. And I
mate,
told her I was like,
zero,
"I'm a kid. Like I can
zero,
do what I want, but like there's a chance this goes to zero." And it
zero.
did. Yeah, that still hurts. That still hurts. I don't think I did much trading after that ever again.
Mm. I went
uh,
through a heavy. I
yeah.
thought I was going to be a forex trade as well at some point. I went hard.
Oh, you had to have the forex craze. Yeah.
To be
It's
fair, I
such a
feel
sure
sorry for
thing.
my ex. I
Such
feel
free
sorry for
money.
my. I genuinely feel sorry for my ex because there was a point where we
Why?
were on a we were on a sailing boat. Like, and I'm
Oh
talking like
no, dude.
Pirates of the Caribbean level sailing boat. And we were volunteering, basically taking out kids. And what I would do in my spare time on this sailing boat, I had like a trading ebook course. And I would be like, anytime we weren't working, I had like a notebook and I was like drawing graphs and like learning patterns and things like that
Oh
for
no.
like a
I'm
week,
getting like
the whole
PTSD thinking
time.
about me doing the same thing. This is a bull flag, okay? You see how they connect right here? You see this high? You see this low? You see these candlesticks?
Oh mate, but you learn a lot of valuable stuff from that, to be honest, as well.
So true.
Not tons, but quite a bit. But anyway, yeah. Can you remember what you were going to ask me before I broke in about the news
Yes.
letter?
Yes. Yes. Oh man, I feel like any one of these topics we could just dive down for a full hour if we wanted to. But yes, okay. So, question. People like us who are essentially, I don't like using the term digital nomads because it's so like saturated and cliche, but for lack of better words, that's essentially what we are. We have complete control over our time for the most part. Like, yes, we'll take meetings here and there, but we don't, that's not how we're making money. So with that being said, and the complete control of time that we have, for the most part, what do you feel like you don't have enough time for in the day?
Mm.
I feel like everyone has that one thing that they're just like, if I just did a little bit, if I had a little bit more time to do this or that, like, at least I know there is for me.
What do I feel like I don't have enough time for in the day? I actually don't know if there is something right now. Like, I feel like
Oh,
I
so you just got it all figured out?
no, I don't think I have it all figured out. I don't think I have it all figured out, but I think all the things that I want to be doing right now in this
Fair.
moment, I want to be doing. Like, for example, I obviously don't have time to, say, do watercoloring, like 2 hours of watercoloring a day, which would obviously be lovely,
Two
like, if
hours of
I
water.
could. But as much as that's a nice thing to do, and I'll probably do it when I'm like 60, 70 and try and look at a nice view, like, I don't want to be doing that now. So it's not in my thing, right? Like, it's like the classic, like, you always have time for something, it's just not a priority. And right now,
True.
I feel like everything that is a priority, I have time to do. So what is that? That's like growing my business, it's learning, it's reading, it's hitting the gym, it's eating good food, it's seeing friends, and probably a bit of dating. Like, I feel like I currently have time for all of those things. Yeah, like, because I could say, like, I don't have much time to see. I'm not seeing that many people. Like, see like people a few times a week, sort of thing. But I also don't want to be, right. So I'm
Right. Mm-hmm.
so I guess the only thing would maybe be like more learning potentially, like whether it's like watching a course or something like that. Like, I always feel like I never have enough
Mm-hmm.
time in the day, but that's also just because I feel like always got a massive to do. Like, you know what it's like having a business. Like,
Right.
there's an
I know.
infinite to do list of stuff to do. So honestly,
Yeah.
like, for me, my biggest struggle, less so now, but especially after I quit the 9 to 5, was doing anything other than working. Like, I kid you not, I spent like 2 weeks in Bali on my own, and this is just after. So I quit my 9 to 5, and then like a month later, I went off to Thailand, with some friends, and then from Thailand, I went to Bali. And in Bali was the first time I was completely solo without any friends, and I was going to be meeting a mentor, but he was doing his kitchen or
Mm-hmm.
something, so he was busy. So he was like, "Give me a few weeks." So I was just chilling in this like rooms, hostel sort of thing. I was in a hostel, but I had my own room. And honestly, for that 2 weeks, I would one the time zone was like weird. So I was waking up about 11. I'd wake up at 11, I'd go to the gym, I'd get back, then I'd go straight to one cafe, and I would get a coffee and a croissant, and I would sit down and I would do like 2 hours of work. Then I would drive 5 minutes to the restaurant nearby, which had a swimming pool, and I would honestly sit there sometimes
This
from
restaurant had a swimming pool?
yeah, the restaurant had a swimming pool and good Wi-Fi, so I would just work at this restaurant, and it had amazing Wi-Fi as well. And I would sit there
Mm-hmm.
from like 1 sometimes until midnight, just working. Because I was like, there's nothing else I want to do. Like sometimes I would go and like I was like, I'll go on a moped and I'll just do like a lap. But honestly, I would literally just
Yeah.
sit there, do work. I'd have a call, and then I would just keep ordering food. And then when it got to midnight or like 12:30, sometimes I'd have like a call at that point, like with the cohort. Then I would clock off. I'd go back to the hostel. I would do like some laps in the swimming pool at like 1 a.m. and then I'd go to sleep. And I honestly pretty much repeated that for 2 weeks. And at the end of it, I was like, I've actually not really done that much yet. And then some friends came to visit afterwards, and I started meeting people towards the end. But yeah, so honestly, for
Mhm.
me, like my thing has been, that's it's not actually that healthy of a balance to do it that much. So for me, it's like, how do you like finding the right balance really of like, okay, actually, you're probably not your most effective if you just sit down and work constantly,
Mhm.
even if maybe that's what you want to do. So yeah, come back
Right.
to the
That's
question. There's
important.
nothing right now, bar maybe I guess just doing more touristy stuff, like potentially that I could do a bit more of that. But yeah, I'm quite happy with my time, Alec. Oh, actually no. Sometimes I'm still sometimes with screen time when you're solo, I'll fall a little bit into, but I've recently got a blocker, so that's like fallen down really low right now. So yeah, man, all in all, pretty good. What about you?
I think you brought up a great point of figuring out a balance, because at least for me, and I'm sure this is the case for you, be like before I met my current girlfriend, it was like work was the default. Like if I wasn't doing anything, I was working. Like if I wasn't at the gym or eating food, like I was on my computer working, doing something, because there's always things to do.
It's not that you have
There's
to. It's
always
just I
this
was
or
like, I want
that.
to. I want to. Like I've got nothing better to do.
Right, right. And I want, like, this is fun. Like I enjoy what I'm doing now. Um, I've honestly been learning about like how to shut it off, how to like be in the moment with people and not think about like, oh, well, I have this tomorrow and I want to make sure that I, get X, Y, and Z done before that so I can do this and then that. Just like learning almost how to a um, prioritize time a little bit better and manage it, but be like just being present. Like I think, at least, coming from my background with like building Notion systems and all the rest, it's a lot easier, I would say, because like let's say I think of a task that I need to get done or an idea, I can just pull up my phone, log it in my Notion, and then put it down. It's saved for later. Like I don't need to think about it anymore. I can just be in that moment. And for me, like that is a form of leverage, being able to do that, because like I just know before, like I would just constantly work, and even then, I felt like I never had a time to learn. Like you said, like to really just learn something new. And I often look back at like what was needle moving for me, like what got me from here to there. It was normally learning something new and applying
Mm.
that learning to whatever I was doing. So I would have to say learning, because I just remember like when I was first starting, that's the only thing I really did was learning, and then trying to apply that and writing little threads and newsletters here and there. But I don't do as much learning as I did before. That's probably something that I should work on, or I have a system for, but maybe it's not good enough if I still feel like I need to do more of it. But that's sort of the nature of us, I suppose.
Hmm. I mean, I think that comes down to partly problems, right? Because like my attitude with books, especially when I started the business, was I'm just going to read whatever my biggest current problem is right now. Like there's, I don't need to finish the book. I can read multiple books. Like I probably have like at any time like 5 to 10 books, going inspired by like Naval's approach of never really getting stuck into one thing. And
I
yeah,
was
because
just
of
gonna
that,
bring that up. I was like, did you get that from
yeah,
Naval?
yeah. Like
Yeah.
so basic, so basic. Right, if we were girls, we would be blonde, blue eyed, and probably dancing on
I'm almost
TikTok.
there.
You are. But yeah, I feel like you need to keep finding new problems almost to want to keep learning. And I think also then like I think
Mm-hmm.
what I want to do more is learning. Like you can get a lot of insights that solve what you're trying to do by looking somewhere completely different. Is the other thing that I'm kind of
Yes,
realizing. So
that's
once again,
so
just
big.
throwing in like a book that's completely random. Um, Also inspired by Naval, like read Feynman, Richard Feynman's like autobiography. tons of little nuggets you can take from that. And yeah, I think just mixing up, like reading fiction as well. Sometimes I want to learn a bit more
Mm,
history. I think that's really important. But yeah, I mean,
hmm
I guess where do you feel like you're not at right now? Where do you want to go with yourself and your current business? Like, what does the next 6 to 12 months look like for you? And I guess within that, why even bother starting this podcast?
Right. I think the next 6 to 12 months for me is going to be focused on like removing myself from the business, like setting up systems that can run on their own. And systems, I mean, really, in terms of people and building a team where I can outsource myself in a sense because I've been so used to just doing it all by myself. And being an ops guy, like my systems are pretty dialed in, so it doesn't really take me as long as you would think to do a lot of things. But that being said, I'm still doing them, and you know, and if I can do it shorter, well, then I just do more things then, and that really it doesn't help with like burning out and all of the rest. So definitely building a team, finding ways to outsource myself, and for the reason of focusing on more creative aspects like this pod. Like I think in I don't know, I don't even want to give a timeline because I have no idea how long this is going to take. 5, 10, 15 years. Like all I really want to do is just do podcasts all day. Like and I only say that because I'm taking this from Sean Puri from My First Million, where he says like
We're so
I
basic.
just want to I just want to have interesting conversations with interesting people every day. And I'm like, yeah, like that sounds awesome. Like I just want to have interesting conversations with interesting people.
Mm,
I think that's a day well spent.
mm. Yeah, agreed.
Where do you
That
want to
seems.
go? Why are we doing this, Tats? Like why are people here? Why should they listen to the next episode or this one?
Mm. So, I guess to give context for me, I'm actually doing the opposite of building leverage in the short term right now. And what I
Shh, don't
mean
tell
by
them
that,
that.
sorry, what I mean by that is I've spent the last year and a half, just over a year, similar to like building leverage, basically, in the sense of, I mean, there's a lot of way, but the most obvious, obviously, is building an audience. It's building an email list, and it's been coaching, and it's been having an assistant, a VA who does work for you. It's the tools we use and all this sort of thing. But I'm pivoting slightly because I mean, there's two important things when it comes to leverage. One is obviously the lever and the length of the lever, but the other thing is force. And the
Mm-hmm.
greater the force you have, the more leverage, the more you can actually take advantage of leverage, right? And so most people, and kind of almost me included, almost want to just skip straight to building leverage. So it's when people like just start
Yeah.
building an audience for the sake of building an audience, hoping they're going to build a business. They're just like documenting my journey to 10K a month. And I don't think that leverage is that useful, right? Like there's no point having a long lever if you can't even push it down. And so for me,
It's
I've
true.
spent the last year and a half like basically coaching people, helping them get their first few clients, writing, teaching them writing, all this sort of thing. And now for the next, let's call it 90 days, 6 months, I want to buckle back down on force. And so what I mean by that is like learning to solve new problems. So all my clients so far have been through Bohm. I've not never done never sent cold DMs, emails, or anything like that. I've just wrote
Me
content
neither.
and
I
let
don't
them come
like
to
it.
me. Yeah, exactly. And so I want to now expand my toolkit because sometimes I come to me and they're like, "Oh, what's your opinion on cold email?" Or "How should I do this?" And I'm like, "You know what? I don't
Mm.
know because I've not done that." And it's the same way that Charlie
Yep.
Munger always pushes, like the man with a hammer. To the man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so far, like my toolkit is Twitter and LinkedIn. It's writing, bit of YouTube, but not from me actually doing it, but from like learning it, and helping people
Mm-hmm.
with it. And then it's things like email marketing and everything warm inbound. Not like, and so now what I want to do is I want to stack my force by getting myself into more businesses. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with my ex actually copywriting coach, and I'm in his startup and I'm helping him grow it. And this feels like, okay, a whole host of new problems. It's a whole different game of finding out how to grow it. I'm testing out
Mm.
cold emails for a change because I want to see how that works. And I want to basically solve all of these problems so that my toolkit is now like way, 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 way more expanded. I have a much better view of everything to do with marketing, and I'm building up my force. And so then so I've actually taken a little break from general content. And so then what I want to do is say in 3 to 6 months time, coming then towards the end of this year, I want to then share the results of that and then maybe touch back into the content and build more leverage to basically to push with my force. And then coming onto this
Right.
podcast, one thing that I like to think about is like I think it's Sean who always says the question like, am I leaning into my strengths to the fullest capacity right now?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think a big part of like us at our age, it's all about figuring out what those strengths actually are, right? And one thing that I've picked up throughout this year is people have said like, man, I've loved all your interviews. Like when I did spaces, like we were like the first guys doing spaces, and like they were getting like 1,000 minimum listens every single time. And every time people would message me like, man, I love the way how you carried the conversation. And I'd also get DMs from the people who I did the podcast with, and they were like, man, that was like I love like I thought you were really good interviewing sort of thing. And so I think one of my strengths is potentially actually being on camera. It's actually interviewing people. It's having this conversation. And I'm extremely curious. Like people tell me all the time, like, oh, you always ask so many questions, always curious. And I think you're kind of similar, which is why like anytime we talk, it could go on for like 3-4 hours, right? So it's partly trying
Yeah.
to find a way to potentially lean into that strength. Secondly, it's the ability to, one, bounce ideas with you anyway, which I would want to do on a call. Two, access people who are further ahead, which is what the spaces allowed me to do. I would never have met
Mm-hmm.
Kieran Drew, John Brosio, Aaron Will, Dakota, any of these guys, unless I'd started those spaces and actually got them on and broken that initial contact where you're
Mm-hmm.
now someone to them, right? And if they enjoy the conversation with you, they're actually, they like you, they're willing to help you out, they're willing to have a conversation here and there. So it's to
And that goes
keep
a long
doing
way.
that. It goes a really long way. And I don't have that anymore where I'm constantly reaching people a little bit further ahead. So it's for that. And then it's
I
also
feel the same
beyond just
way.
having that, it's the interesting conversations, as you say. Like I love
Mm-hmm.
speaking to people. And I think there's always something to learn from people. And I listen to podcasts all the time. So yeah, it's not necessarily for this to grow mega massive or anything like that. But I think it's one for ourselves. And I think it would also be cool for all the people who already currently follow me, because I'm not putting that much content. This is one place where I will actually be sharing
Right.
everything that I'm learning as we're trying to conquer these new problems. And as for why people should even listen, to be honest, like we are definitely not experts. Like you can follow Ormozy, you can follow Sham, like all of these bigger like business guys. If you just want like, if you want someone who's like 1,000 steps ahead of you, right? But one thing I found really valuable is sometimes listening to someone who's just 2 steps ahead of you, 2, 3, 4, and who's recently faced the exact problems that you're facing right now. Whether that's trying to get clients, whether that's writing, whether that's systems, whether it's managing burnout, whether it's managing motivation. Sometimes it helps to speak to someone who was in your position a few years ago, a year ago.
Mm.
And so that's also why I want to do this. Honestly, I don't really see this as like a massive money making thing or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more like a slow burner for all those reasons I just stated
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah. I feel very, very similarly. This isn't like some massive wealth engine that we're building with this podcast right now. It's just, I love listening to podcasts. I love interviewing people. I love being interviewed. I love just talking to people and having interesting conversations. And now we have our own place to do that with each other. And not only like bouncing ideas off of each other and getting inspired by doing X, Y, and Z. Like I think it's not for everybody and all the business owners. It's for the people who maybe don't know what they're doing right now, or like just started, or are in similar positions to us, and like we can just share what we've learned, because no, we are not experts by any means, but we have done some cool things and we're going to keep doing cool things, and hopefully that people who listen can get inspired and do cool things of their own. And we'd love to see that. I don't think there's anything more like fulfilling to me than hearing about somebody that quit their job and started X, Y, and Z because they listened to something that I said. Like it's a feeling unlike any other, for sure. And I'm sure that's why you liked like coaching for so long too, because it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Amen. Should wrap it up there?
Yeah, I'd say so. So, I mean, we can edit this like middle part out a little bit and like cut to the end.
That was good though.
Ask us questions. Leave stuff in the comments. Like, we want things to talk about. So, like, if you have questions, like, leave that in the comments. I'm sure this is going to be at the end in the bloopers, but ask us questions. Share with a friend. Share with your mom, your cousin, your grandpa.
Yeah.
Leave a review. I'm sure that helps. I hear a lot of people on podcasts talk about that.
What?
If you don't want to share it yet, then that's tough. But, like, leave a review. I've heard those. Everybody on podcasts talk about that. So, like, yeah, 5 stars. Yeah, I mean, it's just the first one. It can only get better from here. So
exactly. I'm kind of hoping it is.
We'll have links and stuff in the bottom.
We can do the before and after.
We'll have links and stuff in the bottom. Stay tuned for episode 2, where we talk about amazing things that you guys are so excited to hear about. And maybe we'll answer some of your questions if you leave questions.
But no, that is a good point. Definitely, if you, I've heard, I think it's Shan who said like you should click subscribe, right? Or like tell them to click subscribe.
Click subscribe.
So yeah, if you like the sound of this, if you want to follow along on this journey, like, subscribe, drop a comment to let us know what your first thoughts are on this. And I guess that's
the Life of Leverage podcast with Tats and Hunter.
Woo!
Yeah. Yo, it's time to build leverage, stack up your advantage. Life and business time to manage, never stay stranded. Start with the vision, mission, plan of attack. Keep your eyes on the prize, no looking back.